What is going on, you guys? This is Eric Cuts for the Win, and welcome to my review for Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Took me like 3 tries to get that title right. It's very easy to mess up. But yes, welcome. I hope you guys enjoy. I hope this is informative. Let's go ahead and get into it. You know, when I talked about this game leading up to its release and I did my first impressions after the first 3 hours or so, I pretty much confirmed that yes, when it came to the previews and everybody talking about this game, it is really a mix of different elements and genres put together with like a Star Wars coat of paint. From the Zelda-like puzzles to the Metroid-like scanning and backtracking, the Dark Souls-like combat, the Uncharted-like traversal. All of it was mixed into a game with a Star Wars universe, and that is what initially had my anticipation so high from the beginning. And Respawn really did not disappoint, because each individual element was done so well, and it felt fresh because of the Star Wars coat of paint. For instance, the combat feeling familiar, but when it was mixed with the Force powers, it felt like a Star Wars experience and like a true Star Wars game. The same goes for the puzzles, using the Force to move objects and open new areas, and traversal as well, using the Force to pull a rope in order to swing across and to progress more into the game. So yeah, each individual influence from other games was so thought out and executed with a lot of talent behind it, and a lot of kudos needs to go to Respawn for making a good Star Wars game. My complaint though is a weird one, and one I didn't expect to have, and that is that sometimes these elements felt a bit forced, no pun intended, especially when it came to the backtracking. Sometimes it felt like they did it just to do it, just to kind of check it off the list, and it wasn't really necessary at times. Like for example, there would be a time where I would beat a boss, and then the game would tell me, for story reasons, it would try and use the story to tell me, okay, you need to backtrack all the way back to the beginning of the map where your ship is at. It just felt like the pacing was a bit off in those moments, and it just felt forced in a way that I don't think it should have been forced. I think if it had the areas connect in a different way, or if it felt more natural, I think I would have liked it a bit more, because I enjoy, Metroidvania type games. I grew up on Metroid as one of my favorite franchises, so backtracking is not the issue, it's more so how it's executed, and it just felt, somewhat forced in this game. So yeah, that's kind of my complaint, nitpick, if you will. But I think that just comes with the territory, right? Because you have all these different elements, these inspirations, these identities, really, and you're blending them together. And when I look at it that way, Respawn did a hell of a job. I mean, really, my one complaint doesn't take away the impact they had with everything else. So yeah, kudos to Respawn for sure on this game. It's a solid game, all right? But yeah, flow of video games and pacing, of course, are important, and whenever I felt there was a halt to that, it kind of stuck out to me, so I felt I did need to mention it. And speaking of flow, here's something that did flow most of the time, and that was the combat. This quote-unquote Dark Souls-like combat that I really was excited about, I wanted to get the full experience, so I did play the game on Grand Master Jedi, which is the hardest difficulty, so keep that in mind. I guess I wanted to put my skills to the test, I had to get the full experience. But yeah, honestly, I felt like the game wasn't really that hard until the end. The end is pretty crazy, especially that last boss. But up until then, the game was relatively easy in my opinion. Most of the bosses I beat in like 3 tries or less. Once I really got, that pairing, timing down and everything else, it just really clicked. And the Force powers do make it a lot easier, because obviously you're able to, pull enemies towards you and execute them. You're able to freeze them and, and make it a little bit more easier as you go. But on the higher difficulty, the parry windows are smaller, meaning that I had less time to execute them. Also with the enemies, they get more aggressive and they put more damage as well. So it really brought on more of a challenge to get good at the timing, which is obviously what you have to do to survive. And, it can be argued that it's an artificial difficulty, because the enemies themselves, they don't really change their patterns, they don't really get smarter or anything like that. It's more so that they just get more aggressive. They do the same patterns, but they're just more aggressive about it. They put more damage, and then of course you have your parry window being smaller. So yeah, having multiple enemies at times did pose a challenge, because with them having different patterns and you trying to manage your force meter and rolling away, dodging away, parrying and all of that. That's really where the challenge kind of came in, if there were multiple enemies on the screen. But overall, I didn't really feel too overwhelmed, even when there were a lot of enemies. And even if they were really coming on strong, not until the end. Man, that ending, the last area and boss was very frustrating. And it had to do with just a lot of my inputs kind of being canceled. I think with this game, and this is kind of another complaint, is that I felt like it really wanted me to do one thing at a time. And I know that sounds kind of crazy. Even for me saying it out loud, it's like, huh? But I felt like whenever I tried to heal, for example, like if I was moving, if I was rolling away, if I was running, and then I immediately tried to heal, sometimes it wouldn't work. It's like I had to stop for a split second, not do anything, then heal. And that got me in trouble at times. It can be frustrating, especially that last boss. I felt like sometimes I would go for a parry, I would miss the window, and then I'd try and reset and get the next one. But because the boss was still like in their animation and I was still in the blocking animation or coming out of it, it's like it wouldn't let me re-block or actually get a parry. So it got to the point where I was so frustrated that it wasn't really working or connecting. I had to just roll out of the way and reset like that. So it kind of had me feeling like, man, maybe I'm just too quick. I'm trying to think, one step ahead. I'm trying to move on to the next move. But the game is kind of forcing me to play out the move I just did, if that makes any sense. So I had to really kind of slow down and figure out the timing on things. And it just really could have been frustrating at times, but I just sort of made workarounds around it. Like I would just roll instead of trying to re-parry, I guess. So, as smooth as the combat felt with the force powers, there were those times where it was a little bit janky, where I felt like stuff wasn't really registering, and I felt too quick for the game. I know that sounds crazy, but that's really how I felt. But again, that just could be because it's the hardest difficulty. Maybe the windows are so small that I'm stuck missing the window, and it's not really catching up and letting me do the next thing. I don't know. I can't really explain it. That's the best I can articulate it. I just know it got frustrating sometimes at the end. But up until then, like I said, not too difficult. And when I did slow down my gameplay, I did hit those dodges, those parries, especially those because of the small window. It was super satisfying. It just felt like it flowed very well. Using force powers mixed in there, it gave it, of course, its Star Wars identity. So I want to say this for people who are turned off by the quote-unquote Dark Souls reference. It's basically us using that to describe the style of combat, not necessarily the difficulty. It's really just to describe the process of dodging, parrying, rolling, blocking, and the timing of it, really. So if you are kind of turned off by that reference, don't be. There's so much more here going on with the puzzles, the traversal, the Star Wars universe itself, the story and all of that, to where it's not a Dark Souls game. So I want to make that clear. I don't want people to come into this thinking it's only just a Souls-like game. Like, no, that's just to describe the style of combat. And of course, you got the other things like your XP. And if you lose your XP, then you have to go back and get it if you want that. But the skill points you do get stay. So let's say you have one skill point and you have half meter to the second skill point, you just lose the half meter. You'll still have that first skill point. So just to make that clear. And then when you go back to get your XP from an enemy, you only have to attack them once and actually hit them once. Whereas with like a Bloodborne, you'd have to actually kill the enemy to get your XP back. So that's a little bit more easier in that way. Then of course you have your save point, which is where you meditate, somewhat like a bonfire in a Souls game. It's kind of similar. You rest there, you heal there, you can access your skill tree there, and essentially save the game. And there's a lot of them. Anytime I felt like, man, I'm so low on health, I could really use a save point, they usually popped up. So it's very generous when it comes to the save points in the game and being able to heal yourself. And that's pretty much where it stops for the most part, as far as it being quote-unquote Souls-like. You have your puzzles in there, which kind of resemble somewhat of like a Zelda type of game. You have the traversal with the wall running, which looks a lot like Titanfall. Of course, this is Respawn who did develop this game, so you have that. And that was never too difficult. It was really rare I fell. The only times I really fell was trying to grab onto a rope, especially at the beginning. It was a little bit funky at times, but I never really got frustrated to the point where I was like, screw this game, this is too hard. It never got to that point. So again, if you are kind of scared of this quote unquote Souls-like challenge, it's really not that difficult. And if you are playing on normal, you're going to be more than fine. So yeah, I just wanted to, make that information available to you guys if you were thinking that. It's not a difficult game. Really overall, this game is an action adventure. It has all these different, elements to the game, something I think that is for everyone. And even if you're not much of a puzzle kind of person, there's not that many of them. And same kind of goes for boss fights. If you don't want to fight a lot of bosses, there's some here, but it's not overwhelmed with bosses. And even with the traversal, it's there, but it's not like you're climbing every single thing. You're not constantly doing the same kind of traversal. There's a good mix here, and I really do think there's something for everyone. So I really do recommend this game for anyone and any kind of gamer. It's one of those that it's for everyone, in my opinion. Even if you don't even like Star Wars that much, but you just tolerate it, you'll like this game. It's not like you have to be a diehard fan. You don't have to know all the the universe and all the movies or any of that. It's its own game. It's got its own characters. The main character, he's likable, not amazing in my opinion, but he's good. He's decent. Story is solid. And I just thought the payoff was good, even though some things like the backtracking felt a little bit like it dragged a bit. The ending I thought was a good payoff for some of its characters. And the music, of course, you got your Star Wars type music. So the universe is definitely booming in this game. You'll get that huge Star Wars fix. I even feel like I don't even need to see the movie for a while, the new movie that's coming out, because I feel like I got my fix of Star Wars. So it definitely hits that spot. And one other thing, though, I almost forgot to mention this. The graphics. I did talk about in my first impressions that the graphics looked really good at times and at others looked a little funky, and I still stand by that. Some of these environments are drop dead gorgeous, but the main character in these environments just sometimes looked so unpolished. Like, I don't know what it is. It's weird. And the Wookiees? What the heck happened with the Wookiees? I really, I'm not sure. It's like just sometimes the characters, they just really stick out like a sore thumb. Like they just don't look as good as the environments. But man, there's this one environment in particular that was just so beautiful. So yeah, it's like it has its good and bad, but it can kind of break immersion. Because you'll be feeling like, damn, this environment's amazing, it's beautiful. And then you see your character and you can't help but kind of like chuckle at it, like, damn, he looks weird. So yeah, I still stand by that. Another thing too, which might be the biggest negative about my experience, was the frame drops. I thought it would get better. I was hoping it would. There was a update and it did not fix it, unfortunately. I've had a lot of frame drops throughout my experience with the game. Not to the point where it was unplayable or, it just made me sick or something, but it was noticeable many, many times throughout my playthrough. And this was on PC, so I was expecting, that PC master race feeling, but this is kind of a common complaint. I've seen other people have issues as well, and especially on console. I've seen the damage it's done. My husband's playing it. He's been playing it on PS4. So I've seen it on console as well. And it wasn't very pretty as far as frame rates go. But, it is what it is. Again, it wasn't unplayable. I got through the game and I still overall had a good time with it. It's just that, man, those frame drops really, really kind of broke immersion as well. But yeah, you guys, overall, like I said, I do recommend this game to anyone and everyone. It's definitely a good time. And let me just say that the set pieces in this game are really awesome. A lot of great moments, action sequences. Even right away when the game first starts, there's some crazy action going on. And I even said during my live stream that this is better than the recent movies. And it's because I really felt that way. I felt like it was exciting and compelling, and I especially liked the escape missions, sliding my way to safety. Just really cool moments in the game that I will always remember in my experience. So that's pretty much my review, you guys. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. You can definitely comment below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye.